Well, good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Just wanted to say hi. I hope you're doing well. Seriously, I do. I really do hope you're doing well. Um, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about things I do not understand. And I figure if there are things I don't understand, I'm going to share them with you. And then you will also not understand them and we'll be confused together. And that's just a better way of the world if we're all asking the same questions. And since the Kennedy papers have started coming out, sort of, I'm still thinking, well, we're not really done yet with the last two assassination attempts of President Trump before he became elected. The whole the two guys that tried to kill him, the two that we know of, at least, I have some questions. There's some really there's some really serious question marks about those two events because no one really they seem to sort of have gone away, and I'm pretty sure that President Trump has not forgotten that a couple of guys tried to kill him and would probably like to know why. But just like when they managed to kill Kennedy or later his brother, um, there's so many things that were not really ever answered, and for some reason, it just went away. People asked questions, but the truth has never really come out. And after 9/11, which obviously has its own question marks, Homeland Security was established, and with that, Homeland Security Investigation Services. Basically, it established another intelligence agency with teeth that could do their own thing. And as all intelligence agencies, compartmentalized, divided up in cells, so one cell doesn't really know what the other cell is doing, a little bit like the CIA, where, well, nobody knows what they're doing. But most intelligence agencies, you don't really know what your buddy Bob is doing once he gets out of the elevator next to you. Homeland Security is the same thing, and I want you to grab hold of the whole concept of intelligence agencies with political agendas and compartmentalized into cells. So we don't have to taint all of an agency just because one or two or three or four of them might be involved in, you know, rigging elections, color revolutions, the assassinations of presidents, and so on. It does just raise a lot of question marks about the validity of why they should still exist in the form they do with apparently no oversight whatsoever. Um, let's go to Florida and talk about Ryan Ralph. He was the guy that set up on the golf course and sat there for 12, 13, some many hours, waiting for Trump to, well, unpublicized, go play golf so he could take a shot at him, and he didn't. And he missed, and he got away. He actually got away from the scene. He was arrested further down only because a lady saw him get in the car, got a picture of the license. That's still pretty. He got away from the scene. Usually, when someone tried to kill a president, they don't live that long after, and he's still alive. But he's a strange looking guy. He is a strange looking guy if you look at the weird empty stare in his eyes. But and he was fully committed to doing this deed and filming it on his GoPro and broadcasting it to the world. But who was he exactly? Just some nutcase? And think back to all the presidential or all high profile assassins throughout history that has been ascribed to some nutcase, some crazy guy. World War One, oh, this is some crazy guy, spurred on by patriotic fervor, what have you. Always some crazy guy. Lee Harvey Oswald, oh, some lone crazy guy. He actually had a lot of friends. He was actually quite smart. Um, so back to Ralph. He does look like some crazy guy. You've all seen the photos. He behaves like some crazy guy. So who was he? He was a somewhat unemployed construction worker. Also spent time living in Hawaii in a house he was foreclosing or losing because he didn't have any money. Here's a guy who doesn't have any money, who's sort of out of a job, and still, despite of that, he was involved in some really interesting activities from 2022 and 2023. He would travel to and from Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Taiwan several times, many times, in fact. we start by asking questions. It's going to get better. This is going to get really good, actually. Like I said, I don't understand this, so I'm just going to ask you guys some questions, and we'll see what we can come up with. Um, Ryan Ralphs, he went to all of these interesting places, and at one point in time, he was stopped in customs coming back from one of these trips. In 2023, he was stopped at coming back from Ukraine after his trip, and it was then claimed to customs. They asked, "Where have you been and what have you been doing?" And he said he was the director of an organization called the International Volunteers Center in Ukraine that was recruiting militants from Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, and including Afghani special forces for them to all come to Ukraine and fight. He would then arrange for high-speed visas, no-look visas, from the U.S. Embassy there, supposedly, and have them all come to Ukraine. Basically, he was setting up a clearinghouse from foreign fighters from some of the hottest spots in the world, shall we say, all the CIA hotspots, by the way. And let's not forget who established the Afghani Special Forces when we were there. So he is recruiting basically foreign, I'm not going to say they're all terrorists, but there were some ISIS people in there as well, foreign fighters to come to Ukraine and got them passports. Now, unemployed construction worker, you say, with no money, you say. How did he get money to do any of this? He did say he got some of the money from his ex-wife. Even that, I have a problem with that, really. Now, okay, so he's going to go to help Ukraine and try to bring some people there to fight. Although some very interesting people there to come fight, I'll say. So Homeland Security Investigations had him referred for investigation because, gee, what? There's somebody awake on the border that day that thought that sounded just a little strange. It sounds really strange, actually. But anyway, somebody on the border thought this was strange, so they referred him to Homeland Security Investigations on the Homeland Security. Now, you also might want to remember that Homeland Security was very involved. Investigations were very involved in the January 6th. Where they had recruited people by threats or coercion or bonus to infiltrate all the people like the Oath Keepers and the people who went there to protest the election result. That's what they did. They had basically, the HSI had infiltrated all of the various groups protesting before January 6th. So you haven't established an agency like Homeland Security Investigation. Homeland Security was doing, well, FISA courts comes to mind. Unwarranted wiretapping of Americans comes to mind. They're doing some shady stuff. And if you think that wasn't strange enough, you remember Matthew Crooks, the first guy who shot Trump in the ear. He was training at a firing range where Homeland Security Investigations also trained and shot and were present. And at his event, Matthew Crooks' event, the first Trump shooting, it was done at an event that was understaffed by Secret Service agents. So the remainder, because they had been sent somewhere else to some other things and other things, so the remainder was filled in with some locals and agents from Homeland Security Investigations, who was now tasked with taking part of protecting the Trump rally. I wonder if these were the guys that were supposed to have been on that sloping roof, or they had anything to do with the communication delay. I'm just asking questions because now we have an agency that has affiliations to both shooters and on site. And if you look at, it wouldn't take much for a small cell in the right place to facilitate somebody coming in and gaining access if they knew this was about to happen or suspected. It wouldn't be hard for them to come in and look the other way. Just like with Kennedy, for instance. Didn't take much for somebody to have the guy stand down, change the car, for instance, small things. And we'll get back to why this is actually really interesting, because Homeland Security Investigations there, Um, so when it came down to it, they were also involved in the Texas Garland shooting, where they had undercover agents involved. That happened some years ago. Undercover agents involved in pushing. They were trying to set up this ISIS wannabe terrorist to do this shooting, to go on a rampage. They were nudging him so blatantly on their messaging that the guy who eventually ended up went on the shooting spree was actually asking them to tone down what they were writing to him. And they followed him to the shooting. They set him up. I believe they even provided the arms. They set him up to go do this mass shooting. And he did. And they followed him there and took pictures. They had a photographer with him to take pictures during the shooting, and they didn't stop him. But right after, of course, we sent soldiers to Syria to go against Assad because I guess the guys were from Syria. So a mass shooting was allowed to take place in this country, basically supervised by agents from Homeland Security investigations in order to facilitate the State Department's wish to go after Assad by sending soldiers there. And it goes so far sideways that Hillary Clinton even noted in writing that that ISIS in Syria was our allies there as they were targeting or fighting with Assad and the Russians. If you think you are finding solid allies by siding with ISIS or a terrorist group, I know the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but seriously, um, that's really weird. Now, Ralph would also troll all social medias from Pakistan, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, all these places. In order to find prospects and possible fighters, he would make contact with them and have them send him pictures of their passports, front and back. And he collected over 5,000 passports just from Afghanistan alone, of all these foreign guys, in order to get them no-look visas and expedite them quickly through the U.S. Embassy in Kiev in order to come fight. And not to mention all the others he got from everywhere else. His own social media was full of statements that he was working with the embassy, and also statements that he was annoyed that the U.S. Embassy was not working fast enough to expedite all his foreign fighters. So it's not entirely clear how many of these people did get visas, how many of them did come over. However, that's really easy to find out. It's very simple to see who was issued a visa or a passport. His website also stated to all the, as in part of the instructions to all these foreign fighters, to not alert their own government and to not alert the American government or the locals, just come over and the papers would be fixed. Okay, he's an unemployed construction worker, remember? I'm just saying. It's just, I mean, does anybody actually, I mean, how are you going to believe this at this point now? And this is not really an unusual way for an intelligence agency to operate at all. They use cutouts all the time, subcontractors who are handled by one handler, plausible deniability, one arm's length from the agency, handled by one caseworker. They can be cut off and dumped anytime they go rogue or do something stupid because there's not really any direct liaison. And the crazy guy theory keep persisting because they pick people who are not, well, if he had been like a 40-year or 30, 20-year military veteran or Navy intelligence or had done something that would merit him doing this job, yeah, okay, then everybody would sort of kind of buy into it. But yeah, that makes perfect sense that some agency picked him up to go recruit these dudes. But no, they pick somebody they can work with and shape and form and put ideas in their heads and make them go do this, but they themselves are fairly unlikely to be suspected of doing this. You look at this, I'm just looking at his pictures and some of his videos, and you're like, this seems like a nut job. But again, it fits the profile of what agencies have done. But just for the sake to tie it all together to now, you remember how John Brennan got no-look visas for some of the 9/11 hijackers? Don't remember that, but good. Now, can you remember who his deputy director of Homeland Security was at the time? Alejandro Mayorkas. Remember him? Mayorkas, who led all those 10, 20 million illegal immigrants over the past 40 years. Now, he had gotten himself already in his first scandal in 2015 when he was fast tracking no look visas for big time international donors to the Democrats and for other bad players from around the world. That was Mayorkas, so he clearly know what side he was on and what scruples he doesn't have. Now, the interesting thing about this is, do you remember who was in charge of Homeland Security during in 23 and 24? That was Mayorkas. And when the customs, they referred Ralph's for investigation to Homeland Security investigations after he was stopped in the customs, it was not only rejected, it was refused by Mayorkas to look at his case. So now you're seeing how it starts to tie together. Not only that they probably recruit him and many others to do many dark deeds around the world and in America, they also flew top cover for some of them when they could. And again, how did some unemployed guy get money to go to all these places? I'm not buying his ex-wife was a multimillionaire, because come on. And how did he get contact with the actual Pakistani terror groups, Islamists, ISIS terrorists, back channels through all of these people, and coordinate this with an embassy to get them to come to the West? How does somebody with, not to mention, we say, so let's say he's got some of the money for the travels by his wife. Ralph also donated 125 military drones to Ukraine. And good for them. The Ukrainians put them to good use. Outstanding. However, where the hell did Ralph get them? Or where did he get the money to get them? His wife buy 125 military drones. They're not cheap. And by the way, do you know who runs the U.S. drone program? It wouldn't happen to be a three-letter agency, would it now? Oh, it's the CIA again. Geez. But it really does seem that Ralph, he was a pawn in a much bigger game, probably way too big for himself. But he's perfect to put a whole bunch of layers between whoever was running him and the agencies of the State Department. And well, then you said, well, his whole claim was that he was running the International Volunteer Center in Ukraine. However, they claim no affiliation to him, which after trying to shoot President Trump, I would probably do the same thing, regardless if I had or not. But they did. They claimed that they had nothing to do with him. However, the CEO, the official CEO of the Volunteer Center, he did post on his social media that he wanted to see Trump dead. Charming, very charming. By the way, the Volunteer Center is a 501c charity that was handled by an NGO. Do you know who funded all these NGOs? USAID. Starting to see how this all kind of ties together, don't you? Now, another thing is just questioning. Remember, and I'm still wondering about this, because if I were to start sending threatening text messages or pictures of nuclear plants or whatever, text messaging to other people, and I was about to get arrested and I flushed my cell phone, I'm pretty sure that they could go to whatever my phone company is and retrieve my text message one way or another. I'm pretty sure they're somewhere. Yet the Secret Service and Homeland Security, they all wiped their cell phones after January 6th, claiming they were changing something. They wiped them. But why isn't their text messages to be retrieved by the phone company? The FBI agents, after Crossfire Hurricane, Hillary's setup of Trump or attempted setup of Trump, Russian collusion, all that nonsense, they also wiped their cell phones. I don't think that all my text messages will disappear just because I flushed my phone down the toilet. So I would think that all of these text messages are still out there somewhere, and I think they would be really interesting. Ralph also had a bunch of cell phones. I would love to see what traffic he had and with whom over the past couple of years, not to mention the guy that tried to shoot or that shot Trump in the ear. He also had comms and cell phones, multiples. And one of the cell phones that had visited his home in Pennsylvania has affiliations to the FBI. Basically, you could triangulate and see who went to this house. People who went to his house had also gone to the CIA headquarters or the FBI headquarters in Washington. And I do believe that his parents both worked for the CIA psychiatrists. I'm sure this has nothing to do with a new version of MK Ultra, or Deep Dream, or something. Are they all these people? They really wanted to kill Trump. They really did everything they could to keep him out of office. And usually it's got to do with politics and money. Trump always pledged that he wanted to take an aggressive, neutral position. Pakistan, Ukraine, Russia, Syria, Ukraine. Trying to stop wars. He was always very much about, let's stop the dying, let's stop the fighting, let's do some business. And considering all the money that was made from arms and drugs and oil, and the money going in and out of Ukraine in various ways, there's a war. There's people making money on it. Not to mention, what is BlackRock doing out there as well, and all over the rest of the world that's benefiting. All these agencies are benefiting from war. A war that ostentatiously you can certainly claim that the State Department and certain agencies started the Ukraine-Russia war, even though Russia was the one who jumped off first. I would not say that it didn't all start in 2014 with Victoria Nuland and the State Department's first color revolution in Kiev. This goes a lot deeper and a lot longer, and it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that, well, if any of these agencies making money on these wars have assets that are easily impressionable, such as Ralph's, that to nudge him to go, well, go take a shot at Trump. I mean, look, he's going to stop all this. He's going to do this or go do that. I wouldn't put that past them at all. All that oil money. And what happens if Trump managed to stop the war where it is, freeze the conflict, find a deal, put some key peacekeeper in there. The Ukrainians lose the 20% that the Russians already taken because no one can seem to come up with how they will possibly get them back. Everything from here on when it comes to that is a shitty deal. There's no good deal here, but if the war could be stopped in some way and the killing could end, that would be just awesome. Unfortunately, the Ukraine is probably going to lose some territory. And a lot of that territory has a lot of minerals in it that I'm sure BlackRock would like to have had their fingers on, that if the Russians get to sit on, they won't get. So now there's even more money on the line of this. And history is full of examples of how this is how things have always been done. All these revolutions around the world. But there's some very interesting connections to the blob, to the NGOs, USAID, Homeland Security, CIA, State Department, and the Trump shootings, and the Ukraine war. It all seems to tie together somehow. All the little red lines on the board seem to go to the same place. And wondering again out loud who was holding their hands over Ralph. He'd been a bad boy in his life. He's been arrested over 75 times. And he never spent a single day in jail. I'm just saying. That's all my questions. Lots of questions. And still trying to figure out what the deal really is for the Kennedy paper release. Because it seems that a lot of the papers are re-releases. Some of them with lesser redactions, but a lot of them seem to be re-releases. But a lot of them are pointing to really bad things done by the CIA. And if you look at my other channel and you hear me talk about the OSS and Allen Dulles and the Nazi money and the Japanese gold, and how the CIA, the OSS became the CIA, who was tasked with retrieving some of this and might not have handed it back. This was from the get-go an organization that came with its own funding that was looted by somebody else from somebody else, but found by us, being the U.S. Intelligence Service. Okay, I'm not part of the U.S. Intelligence Service, but us, you know what I mean. Just interesting how all of this sort of revolves around a handful of agencies that seem to do whatever they want. And the crazy lonely shooter, I'm sure we're going to see that again. I'm just wondering, and this is another thing I'm wondering, all these questions that I'm throwing at you because I have no answers. I wonder if MK Ultra ended. Just like the atomic jet ended when it was working and then it disappeared. I don't buy that either, but that's a different story. Built to go to Mars, but anyway, I'm sure we haven't been there and not told us. MK Ultra, the CIA's brainwashing scheme, where most of them died or became vegetables, or that really didn't work well. But did we really stop trying to find different ways of brainwashing people? I hear the operation eventually changed names a few times. I think Deep Dream is one of them, one of the names for the evolution of the brainwashing concept, where I would imagine this is about making Manchurian candidates. And I'm just wondering, have that not always been the case? Remember Sirhan, who shot Kennedy's brother? He had never any recollection of having done it. Well, he still got, sentence for it and all that, but he never had any recollection of having done it. And the guy that shot Martin Luther King, or at least was claimed to have done it, Ray, his name was Ray, alcoholic, supposed to have stood on a bathroom for 10 hours waiting for Dr. King to come out on the balcony. There's just so many strange things to very high power profile public people that happen to people who wants to change things, and we never get any answers. I don't think any public releases are going to do it, but it is now coming to the point where everybody knows, everybody sees this around the world. It seems, and I feel sorry, I love my European heritage and my European friends, but a lot of you still seem to believe that everything is you see in the media is just fine and true. And you make a little fun of Americans for being, what are we saying, a little guarded, a little jaded over here because of what we've seen and how it's been revealed that we've been lied to so very badly. Europeans are lied to just as much and for just as long. And when you start looking at Homeland Security and NATO and other intel agencies' control of stories and media stories and elections around the world and in Europe, who gets traction, who doesn't get traction, who get banned. And now the lawfare, France officially decided to no longer be a democracy. Romania arrested their front runner who was not playing ball. Germany will not let the AfD in government, despite them having roughly the same ideas as the party that did win, would rather do a deal with the insane Greens and socialists than actually letting the second most popular party in. And if the German media had honestly reported on the AfD, they would have won hands down. But the German media, again, under control of their intelligence services, ours, NATO's, their agendas, are not reporting the truth, and people are believing what they see in mainstream TV all over across the board. Here, we sort of woke up a large part of some of us to us. There's the other half that doesn't believe they're running around burning Teslas right now, like other good lunatics that socialists are. We live in very scary times, and people really, really need to start thinking independently and turn off the mainstream and try to do your research and figure out what is actually happening and listen to what the other side says and look at what they do. Don't listen to what just one person say or how it has been reported by some that what he said. But look at what's actually, you got to look at the bigger picture and you got to listen to what they said and what they've done. Look at what they've done, look at what they're doing, and see how that might actually affect events differently than what you are being told. So I ask questions, and you should too. Ask a lot of questions. And if you don't get any good answers, there's probably a reason for that. So take care on that cheery note. It'll be fine, I promise. We'll just have a little bit of trouble first. And I'll see what else I can come up with. See you later.